All right, the news came down just a couple hours ago as I was approaching San Francisco in the plane. So I knew I'd have to go live as soon as I arrived back in the studio. The Atlanta Falcons have benched Kirk Cousins. They're going to Michael Penix Jr., the rookie out of Washington. So Kirk Cousins, he remains under contract with the Falcons through next season, but the NFL world is now on notice. And as soon as 49ers fans or anybody in the 49ers ecosystem hears the name Kirk Cousins, I know exactly what you're thinking. You think about Kyle Shanahan and the fact that Shanahan, his plan was to sign Kirk Cousins in 2018, a season after he took over the 49ers. He's had chances to acquire Kirk Cousins since then, and he's passed, and he's going to pass on this opportunity as well. But it's a great opportunity right in the middle of all this crazy Brock Purdy discourse to talk Purdy, Cousins, and 49ers salary cap literacy, because this is going to be the next pivot point in this ridiculous Brock Purdy conversation. Earlier today, the pivot point was Sam Darnold, and I explained why that wouldn't happen, because Sam Darnold is a worse quarterback than Brock Purdy. His QBR is lower even this season, where Darnold has Justin Jefferson working for him and a number one defense working for him. Everything working for him. I think Sam Darnold is a good quarterback. I think that he rehabilitated his career with the 49ers, with Kyle Shanahan, and with Brock Purdy. But I don't think that he's usurped Brock Purdy, who he already lost the quarterback battle to. Anyway, that was the ridiculous narrative earlier today. That was our pivot point. The world of crazy football talk, crazy 49ers, Brock Purdy talk, that discourse is about to move to wild Kirk Cousins speculation. I can guarantee it. It happens every single time. But we need to remember that this Kirk Cousins that we're seeing right now, that just got benched by the Atlanta Falcons, is number 22 in QBR. I mean, he's been a bottom 15 quarterback this year. There's a reason he got benched. He's also 36 years old. He was number 7 QBR for Minnesota last season, but his year ended with a torn Achilles. And a torn Achilles past the age of 30, especially past the age of 35, you would expect that to be accompanied with a performance regression. And that is exactly what has happened for Kirk Cousins. Number 22 QBR. But I really, really do want to get into the salary cap part of this, because the bigger problem, and this is, we're not talking about Cousins in specific in this whole 49ers QB saga. We're talking about Purdy's contract and how it is exposing people for not understanding how team building works, not understanding how the salary cap works, and not understanding how the quarterback market works. But definitely not understanding how new contracts work. So this is actually a really good opportunity to illustrate how these things function, because we have a couple of hypothetical examples that I could put out in front of you. If Kirk Cousins is traded to anybody, and based on what I understand, he has no trade clause, which makes the Falcons signing him for what they did even more idiotic. They would face like $65 million in dead money, by the way, if they cut him, because he's got so much guaranteed money over the 2 years of this deal. But if Kirk Cousins is acquired by a team in a trade, the team in a trade would owe him $27.5 million guaranteed next season. I can absolutely guarantee you that there is going to be talk, because people just like to put stuff out there for the sake of putting stuff out there. There's going to be talk saying, well, even if Kirk Cousins is worse than Brock Purdy, the 49ers can have Kirk at $27.5 million, and that's better than Purdy at $50 to $60 million. And that is simply not how the numbers work. The 49ers surf the salary cap with their contracts. To give you an example, this is Brandon Ayuk's contract with the 49ers. The shaded blue column, the shaded green column, and the shaded teal column show prorations. Any bonus, a signing bonus or guaranteed option bonus that you give a player under NFL salary cap rules stretches out against the cap for up to 5 years. So a $22.9 million signing bonus for Brandon Ayuk, prorated to $4.6 million over 5 years. $22.9 million option bonus for Brandon Ayuk, prorated to $4.6 million over 5 years. A $24.9 million option bonus number 2 for Brandon Ayuk, prorated to about $5 million per year over 5 years. So it all added up to Brandon Ayuk receiving a contract worth $30 million annually, but a cap hit of only $5.7 million in the first year, $11.9 million in the second year, and $16.2 million in the third year. The big ones didn't come till year 4, 5, and 6. If the 49ers award Brock Purdy the mega deal of mega deals, say that even if this goes APY above 60 million, they can still keep his 2024 cap hit in the 10 million range. It'd be somewhere between, with the structure they've been employing, it's going to be this triple bonus structure, this triple accordion proration. Parag Marathe and the 49ers would be able to keep the cap hit for Brock Purdy in that 10 to 15 million range. So even with the largest deal of all time for Brock Purdy, he would still be cheaper on the 2025 salary cap than trading for Kirk Cousins, who would cost a flat $27.5 million, unless he wanted to restructure his deal and extend him. I don't know why you'd want to be extending a quarterback past the age of 37 who's number 22 in QBR. Again, I only put this out there as a hypothetical so I can illustrate the cost of team building and the discount that teams can get when they negotiate their own extensions with homegrown players. Brock Purdy has already been a hallmark of cost efficiency for the 49ers at cap hits of less than $1 million per year as pick number 262. But even with a massive, massive contract, Brock Purdy can remain a financial bargain for the 49ers, and that is how you reach a win-win in contract negotiations. You have people out there just talking to talk, even though they don't understand any of this stuff, and they're saying they can't afford $55 million. They can't even afford $48 million. They sure as hell can't afford $65 million, and they do not understand that the salary cap actually works like this with contracts. This is how the 49ers have structured their deals. This is how I expect them to continue structuring their deals. It's called surfing the wave of the rising salary cap. So just to quickly explain this, the NFL has revenue every year. That revenue determines how big the salary cap is going to be. So more profit for the league, bigger salary cap for the teams. In every single season except for 2020, which was the year where the world shut down and therefore there were no crowds or very limited crowds and the NFL revenue was extremely limited. In every single season but 2021, the season following that, the NFL salary cap has increased. The 49ers have banked on it increasing. It's projected to continue increasing. More expansion into Europe and South America and Central America is going to allow that NFL salary cap to continue increasing. And it generally is a wise bet to assume that it will grow at a sizable rate. So when that happens, you can actually push salary. So when that happens, you can actually push salary cap hits into the future in the way that the 49ers have with many of their recent contracts. It's been a long time since they front-loaded a deal. They front-loaded Jimmy Garoppolo's deal actually back in 2018. But that's when the 49ers had a lot of cap space. Now they don't have a lot of space. Now they're operating with flow control from year to year, and they're just counting on the salary cap rising as they add to their expenditures. So that is what cost surfing in NFL salary cap terms looks like. And if you execute it correctly, and if you're willing to pay the signing bonus up front, then you could put yourself in really enviable position of accumulating a lot of good players, all on big deals, but on relatively small cap hits in the near term, with bigger cap hits coming in the longer term, where the salary cap will theoretically be bigger. That's how it works. That's how the 49ers have operated. They're not in cap hell yet. They've been able to balance the spending in a way to where the sink is never overflowing in any given year. And based on the track record they've shown so far with Parag Marathe and their salary cap people, I think the 49ers should earn the benefit of the doubt to be able to keep on doing that. Anyway, that's how the finances work. If you want to talk about football and Kirk Cousins' effectiveness and Kyle Shanahan's past affinity for Kirk Cousins, make sure that you contextualize it properly. Make sure that you contextualize it. This is a past affinity. They wanted to sign Cousins in 2018. Instead, Jimmy Garoppolo fell into their laps in December of 2017. But back in 2018, what was that, 6 years ago? Kirk Cousins was in his physical prime. He was 30 years old. Now, again, he's the number 22 quarterback in the league, according to QBR. It's going to be probably our most sophisticated stat to isolate quarterback performance, even though that's impossible to fully do. For context, Brock Purdy remains in the top 10 in QBR. Brock Purdy was number 1 in QBR last season. So, and Brock Purdy is also, 24, 25 years old? He's much younger than Kirk Cousins. Team building is something that is done with the long term in mind. And that's what the 49ers are looking at right now, the long term, as they look to build their team around Brock Purdy. It was a wild, wild day today that was capped off by Kirk Cousins being benched by the Atlanta Falcons. But there's more. The 49ers waived Ambry Thomas today. And Ambry Thomas, there was a tweet. I've got to show you guys the tweet from 3 days ago that I think definitely was related to the move today. So I have the tweet ready. I'm going to get the tweet up on the screen. Here you go. Ambry Thomas saying that he's been collecting dust since week 8. Make a move anywhere, anything. Ambry Thomas broke his forearm in the preseason. I believe that was the game against the Tennessee Titans. And then he went to injured reserve after the 49ers carried him on the initial roster. But he, at no point, was activated from injured reserve. And according to the tweet, he was ready to go by week 8. The 49ers haven't had room for a cornerback on the 53-man roster. They haven't needed Ambry Thomas. Everybody that they have rostered has been a better player. So Ambry Thomas complained on Twitter about collecting dust. He wanted to play. I don't know. Maybe he even went into the office of John Lynch and said, hey, can you please waive me? I'll pass through waivers or somebody will claim me, but at least I'll have a chance to play over the final 3 games of this season. And the 49ers, determining that Ambry Thomas was not in their long-term plans, decided to go through with that course of action. They've waived the cornerback, the rookie, the 3rd-round pick, on the same day that the Cleveland Browns waived the 49ers' former 3rd-round pick, another 3rd-rounder, Cameron Latu. So both Thomas and Latu cut today. Both will have to clear waivers. Underscores some of the troubles that the 49ers have had drafting in the 3rd round specifically. Ironically, though, that's where they found Fred Warner back in the 2018 draft out of BYU. But Thomas, well, you can thank him for the memories if you're a 49ers fan. He did notch that interception of Matthew Stafford that sent the 49ers to the playoffs back in the 2021 regular season finale. And that, funny enough, was back when Ambry Thomas was ahead of Deommodore Lenoir on the depth chart. Thomas was a rookie. Lenoir was a 5th-round pick. He was a rookie. But Lenoir passed Ambry Thomas over the 2022 offseason and never looked back. Lenoir signed the $88 million contract extension with the 49ers not long ago, and obviously Ambry Thomas was never in line to be re-upped. So some picks work out, some don't. Sometimes the 5th rounder ends up being a better player than the 3rd rounder. I think it just goes to show you that the NFL draft has a lot of crapshoot tendencies. The draft is it's a dart throwing contest. You step further and further back from the dartboard with each successive round, so it becomes harder to hit, but that doesn't guarantee that you're going to hit on the short throws. And the 49ers hit on the 5th round throw, which was from further away than the throw for Ambry Thomas in 2021, the 3rd round throw. Other news for San Francisco today, they made a couple signings to their practice squad. We know that the 49ers needed an offensive tackle just because of the fact that they are seeing injuries to their depth pieces and to Trent Williams. Here's a look at the 49ers 90-man roster to get you updated on who they brought in. The practice squad now has Austin Pleasants, who entered the league in 2020. So Jalen Moore was out of practice on Monday. He was working off on the side. Trent Williams has currently been out of action entirely. So Colton McKivitz is healthy on the right side, but the only healthy other tackle on this football team has been Sebastian Gutierrez over the past few days, who was just recently re-signed to the 49ers. So Austin Pleasants joins the practice squad, 6'7", 330. They'll have the ability to flex him up on game day in case Jalen Moore is not ready to go. And even if Jalen Moore and Trent Williams are both in line to be ready Sunday against Miami, we don't have intel on that front yet. Even if that ends up being the case, they're going to need more bodies for practice this week. So that's why Pleasants is on the team. And then at linebacker, they brought in Chandler Wooten, another undrafted free agent, recent undrafted free agent. Wooten, they need a guy for practice purposes at linebacker because Devondre Campbell has been suspended. He's played his last down for the 49ers, and they needed another body at the linebacker position. Good news on Dre Greenlaw on KMBR today. Dre Greenlaw said that he will play against Miami. Dre was walking out of the press conference like an old man the other day. You could absolutely witness what the rigors of an NFL game can do, even to a great athlete. And that was an athlete who hadn't played in the game in 305 days. So he took a few hits. He absorbed some contact, and he was sore after the game. But they've also got good recovery techniques in the league, and Dre Greenlaw feeling a lot better now, to the point where he said that he's going to be in that lineup on Sunday. The way that 49ers teammates have talked about Dre Greenlaw has really, really been eye-opening. George Kittle called him a football unicorn. Nick Bosa essentially advocating for his re-signing. I think everybody saw it with their own two eyes on Thursday night against the Rams, how much better this 49ers defense was with Dre Greenlaw than without him. And for him to deliver that type of explosiveness just about 10 months after tearing his Achilles. Remember, the Achilles injury is really what ultimately derailed Navarro Bowman. He suffered it at age 28. Dre Greenlaw suffered it his at age 26. And I made the point at the time that the fact that he suffered it 2 years sooner is big, because the younger you are, the better chance you have to recover. But I never expected Dre Greenlaw to be at 100% burst his first game back 10 months after the injury. That, to me, is truly special. And it's one of the reasons why George Kittle called him a football unicorn. So he's going to be back in the lineup for the 49ers. And I'm working on a piece right now talking about what Nick Bosa said. He wants all the defensive linemen back for San Francisco because, I mean, they're coming off of a really, really good defensive performance against the Rams. And the D-line itself for the 49ers looks like it's got some dudes. And people might not have been able to tell over the course of the regular season, especially those struggles, because some of those dudes were hurt. And also injuries and ineffective play behind them in the back seven was making the front four look a lot worse. But Leonard Floyd ranks number 12 in pass rushing productivity. It's 12 out of 69 edge rushers. He's way up in the 80th percentile. Bosa's in the 90th percentiles. Malik Collins is number 5 amongst defensive tackles in pass rush win rate on the interior. I mean, Yetur Gross-Matos just won NFC Defensive Player of the Week. All these guys, they're shaded in green here. As you can see, that means they're under contract next season. So the 49ers are in a position now where this defensive line, which developed over the course of this year, which is playing really good football now, the tape and the metrics all agree. All these guys are under contract for next season. They've learned the wide nine. It takes a while to acclimate to that nuanced system. I think they could really hit the ground running, maybe with an addition through the draft or maybe another addition in free agency in 2025. But what they have to make sure to do is to fortify what's behind that defensive line, because in the wide nine, the linebackers have a lot of responsibility. And as you can see here, Dre Greenlaw is not yet re-signed. And I think it's Not a coincidence that you could hear it in the comments from 49ers players. They're essentially begging the team to re-sign Dre Greenlaw because he's going to be such an important fixture behind a defensive line that's going to have a lot of hype, and I think rightfully so, entering the 2025 season. Greenlaw behind that line, Warner behind that line, a healthy Warner behind that line, and then a secondary that's going to take some offseason work too. That 49ers secondary is looking at more players right now not under contract for 2025 than players who are under contract. It's going to be fascinating to see how the 49ers retool that part of the roster, but it doesn't look like there's going to be much drama along the defensive line, and that all ties in with the lobbying to bring Dre Greenlaw back next season. All right, we're going to open this up to a 49ers Q&A. I flew cross country today. I am back in the studio. We're talking Kirk Cousins. We're talking Brock Purdy. And hopefully through the lens of some questions, I'm able to provide you some good answers. Wading into the comment section. Exactly. This is some good knowledge. The wide nine uses linebackers as a support. The defensive line is supposed to GTFO, which is get the off the line and shed blocks in the wide nine. So you've got to have that linebacker support in the wide nine. The gaps are bigger. It's simple geometry. The wide nine is wide, like there's a wide alignment. So the linebackers really have to do their job. I think that some of the 49ers problems, many of the 49ers problems resulted from the linebacker position being weaker this season than in years past. And I mean, it was obvious. Dre Greenlaw, was it somebody said today? I think it was Diamondo Lenore said yesterday, that Dre Greenlaw would have been Super Bowl MVP had he not gotten hurt, and the 49ers would have won that game. It's a bold claim, but Greenlaw was on fire through the first three possessions of that Super Bowl. And then the Chiefs were able to catch fire after he tore his Achilles. So that linebacker position is really important. What will happen with Elijah Mitchell? Well, Mitchell's contract is going to toll. That means the 49ers can have another year of Elijah Mitchell's if he's able to come back and get back to health in 2025. This was the final year of his rookie deal, but by NFL rule, if he's on IR that whole final year and he was placed on season-ending IR, that year tolls into 2025. And as we know, Elijah Mitchell, when he's healthy, is a good back. Joe says the 49ers missed Greenlaw, but why was Campbell's lazy attitude acceptable throughout the season? I don't necessarily think that Campbell was showing a lazy attitude throughout the season. I think he was showing a very lazy attitude after Dre Greenlaw returned and when D. Winters was taking some of his snaps on Thursday night. But Campbell wanted to be on the field. He even complained about D. Winters taking some of his snaps earlier in the season. I haven't gotten any intel that he was lazy for the 49ers before that. So they needed a fill-in, and they wanted an experienced fill-in. Campbell had been an all-pro. He wasn't their first choice. That's important to mention as well. Eric Kendricks was the first choice. Kendricks agreed to join the 49ers, but never signed on the dotted line. He changed his mind to join the Dallas Cowboys instead. So Campbell was the backup plan. The backup plan walked out on the 49ers on Thursday Night Football against the Rams after Dre Greenlaw came back. I mean, we've spent hours discussing this at this point. 49ers are severely punishing Devondre Campbell for it, as they should. They cannot let this become some sort of precedent, what Campbell did. So they have to make sure that the precedent is instead set by them. So such things do not threaten team culture in the future, because this definitely threatened that. I mean, the response had to be harsh, both from team leaders and like as players and from team brass. You have to put your money where the mouth is. And that's what the 49ers were able to do in the case of the suspension of Devondre Campbell. You know what's so insulting about what Campbell did? Somebody asking about Jason Verrett in the comment section. What would Jason Verrett give to be able to go out there and play? I mean, Jason Verrett's body just continued to fail him over and over and over again. And then you've got a guy like Devondre Campbell who's perfectly healthy, who says, no, I'm not going to play. Guys like Jason Verrett, who went through the strain of rehab multiple times just to suffer another devastating injury. Just the toughness on somebody like that and the desire on somebody like that. It's a slap in the face to football players everywhere, but especially to football players like Jason Verrett. When you're available and able to play for millions of dollars and you say no to it, and instead walk out on your team, a team that was counting on you in a close game with the season on the line. I mean, just think of that. Think of the blood, sweat, and tears that a lot of these players who can't play anymore put into the game trying to play, and then think of what Devondre Campbell did just walking away from a team that was counting on him. That's why the reaction is what it has been from the 49ers. Do I think the 49ers add a name to the coaching staff? I think they add multiple names to the coaching staff. There's always coaching turnover. There may not be as much in terms of coaches getting promotions this year from the 49ers because they haven't been as successful. But I do think that there's always going to be an addition because life will happen. And I think the 49ers should even entertain outside knowledge, the idea of that outside knowledge being infused into the system. I think that's absolutely something that could help Kyle Shanahan break the impasse. We've heard Steve Young say it, that Kyle Shanahan's going to have to reinvent himself. Bill Walsh had to reinvent himself. Every great coach has had to reinvent himself because the league is an ongoing chess match. It's Kyle Shanahan's turn now, given how we've seen the 49ers struggle in some areas offensively, play calling wise this year. Mike McDaniel might be available. Who knows? Mike McDaniel, the coach of the Miami Dolphins. Say the 49ers go into Miami and blow out the Dolphins. Is Mike McDaniel still going to be the coach of Miami next year? I don't know. I'm speculating right now. But what if Mike McDaniel's available? What if Clint Kubiak, the pass game specialist for the 49ers last year, who's the OC of the New Orleans Saints this season, what if he becomes available again? What if some of these names who have worked with Kyle Shanahan in the past can potentially rejoin him? Does Shanahan consider the brain drain over the past few years to be so damaging that he would love to welcome some of those guys back? Potentially. But we won't know until the actual coaching cycle begins, and that won't begin in earnest until the end of this season. Okay, this right here, this is not fair to Nick Bosa. Joe is asking, Bosa's a captain, so why didn't he play the leadership role before the game to see Campbell's warning sign? So Bosa basically said that Campbell was complaining a little bit, and in retrospect, that was some kind of like foreshadowing of what would happen. But Nick Bosa himself said, I had no idea that this would turn into Devondre Campbell walking off the field. Like, hindsight is 2020, guys. It is shocking to see a grown man making $5 million walk off a football field fully healthy because he doesn't want to play. There's no way that Nick Bosa could have anticipated that. Devondre Campbell, even though he had some social media incidents in the past after he left the Packers, he talked some trash about how the Packers used him. You're kidding yourself if you think somebody knew this was coming. So no, it wasn't Nick Bosa's responsibility to see the future in the locker room. I feel that people just want to point fingers and blame everybody. The guy to blame here is the athlete making $5 million this season, who was perfectly healthy, who decided to betray his teammates. There's only one person to blame in this whole incident, and it's Devondre Campbell. It's not Nick Bosa. It's not the 49ers lock. It's not the guys who signed Devondre Campbell. I mean, there's got to be some personal responsibility in this life. And the 49ers compensated Devondre Campbell well, and he decided not to live up to his end of the contract. End of story. If you want simplistic blame, there you have it. It's a cut and dry situation. Mike says with the defensive coordinator, he's fine with the 49ers rolling with Nick Sorensen, but he wouldn't mind them switching to Jeff Ulbrich, the Jets defensive coordinator, 49ers former linebacker, who is, he's now the interim coach for the Jets. He might not stay in that role given how many struggles the New York Jets have had. Here's the thing with Nick Sorensen, a fair evaluation, like a complete and fair evaluation, is not possible until you have the full season under his belt and he actually has had a few games to work with a full cupboard of personnel. And I think that just started these past couple weeks, really just in the Thursday game against the Rams. That's when Nick Bosa came back. That was a really good defensive performance. The performance against the Bears was also obviously good. Nick Sorensen didn't have his guys early in this season. I was critical of the schematics of the 49ers defense over the early part of the season. By no means am I saying that Nick Sorensen was doing a great job. I think that the blitzes weren't hitting home. I don't think that he was scheming stuff up out of the standard talent defensive structure. But I didn't really expect him to be great at that over his first half season as a defensive coordinator. Remember the DeMeco Ryans really struggled in his first half season? Robert Saleh struggled early on too. 49ers didn't really have the personnel, though, early on. They didn't get it until 2019 for Robert Saleh. But in the case of DeMeco Ryans and Nick Sorensen, it looks like the stride is being hit late in the year. And the 49ers really calculated this entering the season. What they didn't calculate is blowing games to the Rams and to the Cardinals and to the Seahawks over the first half or so of the season. Those were the extremely damaging losses. But had they not blown those games, there were some really bad plays in those games that did not go the 49ers' way, but had they won at least one of them, they could have weathered Nick Sorensen growing on the job and still made the playoffs. But this is life. Like sometimes stuff doesn't work out that way. Sometimes you don't weather the storms that you expected to weather, that you built into the calculus of the season. And sometimes it ends up screwing you. And if that happens and your playoff hopes are dashed early, then you've got to repack and be better next year. And that's probably where the 49ers are heading this season. But in the bigger picture of things, it was going to take a while for Nick Sorensen to hit his stride, and he definitely needed to have his horses to be able to do that. And it looks like the 49ers now with Greenlaw back, with Bosa back, with Talanoa Hufanga back, looks like they finally have the horses for us to be able to actually fairly evaluate Nick Sorensen. So that's something I'm going to be watching over the course of the past 3 games. There's going to be all eyes on Brock Purdy, right? Everybody's going to want to see how he performs under the spotlight now because everybody's talking about this contract. But the 49ers defense, they've been really good their last 2 times out. So that means that Nick Sorensen is obviously being looked at more favorably by at least some people. How are they going to finish the season against 3 really competent offenses? It's Mike McDaniel, Tua Tagovailoa, the Dolphins. Even though the Lions have a ton of injuries, the offense is still relatively healthy, and they've been at the top of the league all year. They're coming to Levi's after this next week, after Christmas, before New Year's. And then Kyler Murray. Kyler is top 5 in QBR this season. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. These are really, really interesting tests coming up for the 49ers to see what kind of track Nick Sorensen has them on, and to see also on the offensive side of the ball where the 49ers are headed with the fight of Kyle Shanahan and the fight of Brock Purdy. I mean, you could start making some of the counter adjustments now. You don't have to wait until the off season. So we'll see how successful the 49ers are in that regard. I'm sorry, Josh. I'm not trying to avoid your questions. I'm sitting here with 2,371 people watching and a lot of comments rolling in, and I look to the questions and they're scrolling, and sometimes I'll see your question, sometimes I won't. It's nothing personal against you. So just doing my best over here, man. If you have a good question, put it up again. And if I feel like putting it up, I will. I won't lie. Sometimes I don't like the question, so I don't put it up there. But sometimes, most of the time, I just don't see it. So please don't take things personally. Mufasa wants the 49ers to sign Daniel Jones. You know, that could be the high upside backup signed on a affordable contract. That's where Sam Darnold came from for the 49ers. They rebuilt his stock, and now he's the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. Maybe Daniel Jones heads through the 49ers quarterback academy working under Brock Purdy next. It is totally, totally possible. Here's Indiana Jim. I'm tired of this idiotic fan base and their dumb quarterback opinions. Well, it's my job to deal with it, so I'm not tired of it. I find it kind of funny at times, but yes, there are some really, really bad opinions. And that's where I started this show. Those of you just joining, we talked about Kirk Cousins being benched. That's inevitably going to lead to discussions from the fan base about Kirk Cousins and a trade to the 49ers. But it's a good opportunity to maybe teach some salary cap literacy. And Kirk Cousins would cost $27.5 million for any other team to acquire on the 2025 salary cap. The 49ers, if they re-sign Brock Purdy, even to the very largest deal possible, it's only going to cost something in the $10 million range for the 2025 season. Why? Because they run some cost surfing with the salary cap. They surf the wave of the rising cap. This is Brandon Ayuk's contract. And Brandon Ayuk's contract has these prorated bonuses that allow the 49ers to keep his cap hit at $5.7 million and $11.9 million in the first 2 years. They're very likely to do the same thing with Brock Purdy's contract moving forward. So, no, don't expect the 49ers to be interested in a quarterback who's number 22 QBR. I mean, Cousins, following the Achilles tear, has really, really slid in performance. And that's why the Falcons, who technically are still in the hunt, benched him for a rookie, for Michael Penix Jr. So I think that solves that. And I know that there's some terrible opinions out there. I think a lot of people just don't understand the salary cap, don't understand the QB market, don't understand how good Brock Purdy has been, even this season for the 49ers. I've got another really good stat here for you to illustrate that quarterback play and team play, those are two separate things. They could be related, but in some instances, you can't judge one by the other. And some of the analytics that we have really, really help us understand that. Here is a really, really good one when we look at Brock Purdy. This is something that you should carry with you into the wildness of the next few months. So x-axis is pressure to sack rate. Y-axis is catchable throw rate. As always, you want to be further up and to the right because the pressure to sack rate actually decreases the further to the right you move. Look how bad Caleb Williams has been this year. Can you even see Caleb Williams' dot, or do I need to take off the text title off of this screen? Oh my God, you can't even see Caleb Williams' dot. So this is where Caleb Williams is at, way in the bottom left. He is seeing so many sacks relative to the pressures that are coming. 49ers had like 11 pressures against the Bears, and Caleb Williams was sacked 7 times. It's a terrible ratio against the 49ers. Now, Williams, this has been an ongoing problem. So he's getting sacked way too much, and that's why sacks are very much a quarterback stat. And then he's not throwing a very catchable football. His catchable throw rate is the lowest in the league. But the reason that I bring this out is because of Brock Purdy. Look where Purdy is. He's in the upper right. I'm circling his name with my cursor. Brock Purdy, 2024. He's got one of the higher pressure catchable throw rates in football and one of the lower pressure to sack rates in football. Those are two good things. You want to be in the upper right. Now look where Purdy was in 2023. Again, I know there's a big mess here, but I'm circling where Purdy was in 2023 with my cursor. Purdy in 2023 was in the lower right quadrant. His pressure to sack rate last season, when he had better overall numbers, was actually higher, so it was worse, and he was throwing a lower catchable ball rate. So he was technically throwing worse according to this metric, and he was worse at avoiding sacks, yet he was an MVP finalist. So how do you explain that? How do you explain the fact that Brock Purdy, some of these individualized metrics are actually better in 2024, but the overall efficiency has gone down in 2024? The team around him has been worse. It's a team sport. Again, I have to keep on repeating this. In 2023, the 49ers ranked number 11 in separation at the time of catch or incompletion. In 2024, they have dropped to number 32. They've gone from 11 to 32. Their screen pass usage has dropped from top 6 all the way down to the bottom of the league. The yards after the catch, a lot of which are created by scheme, right? They set the quarterback up. He then has to execute it. But if the opportunities aren't there, the quarterback has nothing to execute. Well, the yards after the catch have tumbled from number 1 to the very bottom of the league. The injuries have created this. The Brandon Ayuk Holden created this. Kyle Shanahan struggles created this. I mean, it's everything kind of snowballed on the 49ers this year. You could even call it a perfect storm. The situation around Purdy has indisputably been much worse. So then you get these stats when you actually analyze things, when you actually zoom in, you get these very interesting stats where Brock Purdy actually has a higher catchable throw rate than he did last year. And he actually has a pressure to sack rate that's better than it was last year. Yet on the aggregate, he's performing worse. This is why you cannot leave quarterback analysis and these Brock Purdy contract discussions to simpletons, because they're just going to look at scores of games and decide that Brock Purdy has severely regressed, even though there's some indication he might have even been better this year. He wasn't better against the Rams. That was a bad game for Brock Purdy. All quarterbacks have bad games. Right now, there are Ravens fans and Bills fans arguing about who should be the NFL MVP, Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. And I see Ravens fans saying, well, Josh Allen had 3 bad games earlier in the year, as if every quarterback in NFL history didn't have a bad. I mean, this stupidity permeates the entire league when it comes to quarterback discourse. Josh Allen has been the best quarterback in football this year. He's been the most efficient quarterback in football this year. Lamar Jackson has been in second place behind him. Those two have been 1 and 2. But to try to disqualify either of those for having a bad game, it's ridiculous. It's the same thing that they successfully did in the narrative to Brock Purdy last year when he had a bad game against Baltimore on Christmas Day. It's just not how the reality of football works, though. Bad games happen everywhere, and 1, 2, or even 3, or even 4 bad games in a season do not make a season for a player. So just in the way that they shouldn't define Josh Allen, they don't define Brock Purdy. And there's a reason why I look at aggregate stats. There's a reason why I look at the big picture. There's a reason why I look at QBR and why I reconcile all that with the tape that I watch, because I want to take bias out of it. And to take bias out of it, you have to look at the aggregate. You got to look at the big picture. You have to trust the data. The only quarterback in the league, I mean, QBR and a lot of these stats that are so correlated to quarterback grade, like EPA per play, it counts for everybody in some people's minds except for Brock Purdy. For some reason, his numbers are fraudulent. And that's what we call subjectivity. That's what we call bias. And that's what we don't partake in on this channel. All right. 49ers update continues. I'm going to put up the Q&A tag. You guys can ask a few more. Indiana Jim says this team did not regress because of Purdy. Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Purdy should have won the MVP last year. That's another comment. I agree. I think Purdy or McCaffrey, it was the best offense in football. It was the greatest show on turf type of efficiency. And, you know, last year we talked about it a lot. The Purdy or McCaffrey MVP question. They're both finalists. McCaffrey is the better player. You know, he transcendent when he's healthy, right? But Purdy was the more valuable player because he played quarterback. Like, positional value does matter in the NFL. What's Purdy's pre-injury and post-injury ranking for efficiency? Oh, that's a really good question. It's a really good question. Why don't I look that up? Let's go to, and the post-injury sample size has actually been very relatively small for Brock Purdy, so we do need to proceed with caution here. But the injury happened when? Was that the Seattle game? So let's not count the Seattle game at all here. Let's do everything up to the Seattle game and then everything after it, since we don't know when exactly it happened in the Seattle game. What week was that, Mike? Was that week 11, Seattle? I want to make sure that I do this as fairly as possible. So we're going to go quarterbacks. We're going to go Regular season week 1 to 10. Mike, was it week 11? He's looking right now. I'm pretty sure it was week 11, but if I'm wrong, then I'll adjust it. And I'll put the results up on the screen. All right, good. Okay, so it was week 11. So prior to the Seattle Seahawks loss, this is where Brock Purdy was, weeks 1 through 10. He was number 5 in efficiency. So Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and then it was Brock Purdy. It was number 5 in EPA per play. Okay? So that's part of the question, or part of the answer. Now I'm going to shift this to weeks 12 to now. Now, it's obviously a much smaller sample, but hopefully this gives us the data that at least begins to answer Mike's question. So ever since week 12, Brock Purdy, who ranked number 1 in efficiency, number 5 in efficiency from weeks 1 to 10, ever since week 12, Brock Purdy ranks number 18. So before the injury, number 5, after number 18. Now, again, small sample. There have been a lot of mitigating factors here. He played a game in the snow against Buffalo, and then it was rainy, and wasn't fully rainy the whole game, but it was rainy against the Rams. So you have 2 weather games in that sample, but you also have a fantastic dry game outing against the Chicago Bears, one of Purdy's best games as a 49er. But again, small sample, but if you do look at the games since he came back from the shoulder injury, Purdy has not been as good as he was before the injury. Mike says you have to think it has affected him. I don't know, because he hasn't said if it's affected him. The 49ers haven't indicated that it has. Anytime that I think of that, I also think of the game against Chicago where Purdy was completely on fire. That wasn't a bad pass defense that he lit up against the Bears. I just think we need more data. I just think that we need a little bit more time. And if this is an issue with Brock Purdy's shoulder, then it's something the 49ers will definitely want to get to the bottom of before they execute a contract. So just sit back, and we don't have to wildly speculate right now. We could see what ends up happening by the end of the season when the Brock Purdy is indeed eligible for this contract. Ian notes that Purdy seems to be giving his long throws more air. And yeah, I mean, but there haven't been a lot of long throws, and the last game was played in the rain, and Matthew Stafford threw 3 interceptable passes on the other side in the rain. We're not talking about Matthew Stafford having health issues right now. So, I mean, it could have just been as simple as a wet football does affect essentially every quarterback in the game. So let's just wait, because there's way too much potential noise in any study that we do at this time. Yes, and last year Brock Purdy completed a record amount of his 20-plus yard throws. And obviously he went 0 for 7 in this most recent game against the Rams. But one game is a very dangerous sample to play with. You know, a lot can happen in a one-game sample. That's why we look at the big picture with Brock Purdy. Now, this is really stupid. I'm sorry, Pat, but this is a really... And I've seen a lot of these types of comments. Matthew Stafford made a play and Brock didn't. What play did Matthew Stafford make? Did Matthew Stafford make the play in which the 49ers dropped 2 should-be interceptions? Because the throws that Matthew Stafford made were even more interceptable than the one that Brock Purdy made late in the game. Nobody's saying that was a good play from Brock Purdy, but it wasn't any worse than the ones that Matthew Stafford made early in the game, and the 49ers just let him off the hook. They dropped the passes. Then you talk about a play that Brock Purdy didn't make. Well, what about the perfect throw that he made to Deebo Samuel that should have been a touchdown, but Deebo Samuel dropped the ball? We didn't see drops on the Rams side. So to say that Matthew Stafford made a play and Brock Purdy didn't means that you just put a blindfold on and you watch the game. You had one of those sleep masks. You put a sleep mask on your eyes and you're sitting there in front of the TV. You're not actually watching. You're regurgitating really, really dumb narratives that we see, even national media members make. But when you actually watch the game, you realize that neither quarterback played well. One got lucky in Matthew Stafford. And I would say that Brock Purdy, despite the fact that he didn't play well, he didn't get very lucky in that game. Deebo Samuel dropping that pass, not very lucky. Matthew Stafford had the dropped interceptions. Brock Purdy had the drop touchdown pass. Mufasa misses Jimmy G. I think a lot of 49ers fans do. In what way did Matthew Stafford play better than Brock Purdy? Like, actually give me an objective way in which he played better than Brock Purdy, and I'll grant you your point, but you can't. Because just by saying this, you are not acknowledging that there are factors outside of a quarterback's control that lead to how a game is determined. And if you can't acknowledge that, then you're going to lose every single football debate that you partake in. It's as simple as that. If you are going to be so obtuse that you oversimplify quarterback play to one team won, so that guy made plays, another team lost, so that guy didn't. If you don't recognize plays like the 49ers dropped interceptions and Deebo Samuel's drop, you're not going to win this argument with me. Because you're not being objective. You're being subjective while I'm being objective. Ian thinks that Kyren Williams won the game. I like Kyren Williams. He's short frame, tough runner, kind of like a bowling ball out there. Ran hard at Notre Dame, and Rams have a lot of pieces to like. It's going to be interesting. I think they're the best team in the NFC West. I think they're best positioned right now to win the division. Seattle did not look good at all on Sunday night, and the Cardinals are interesting because Kyler's playing maybe his best football of his entire career, but you look at a team that has a chance to be as complete as possible. And the Rams have got the defensive front to stop the run and rush the passer. I know the secondary isn't very good for the Rams, but they have a front that can make some noise. I think Matthew Stafford ultimately is a quarterback I would trust more than Kyler Murray in a playoff situation. And the receivers, man. Puka Nacua, when Cooper Kupp is your number 2, I mean, I know he's not 2021 Cooper Kupp anymore, but the 49ers did something impressive in not allowing the Rams to score a touchdown, but I do think the Rams are going to be scoring touchdowns against other teams in their schedule moving forward. I don't think that people see here's the problem. A lot of people are talking about 60 million this, 50 million that. Guys, calm down. Stop talking about APY as if you think you know what it means. Like, APY is a back end number that is average per year. That's the number that we're going to get after the deal is secured, and we know the amount of years, and we know the total amount of money, and we'll divide the total amount of money by the amount of years, and you'll get APY. It tells us absolutely nothing about what matters, and that's structure. Okay, so everybody's sitting here arguing he's going to get 60, he's going to get 50. None of that matters. It really doesn't. What does matter is how the 49ers are able to fit this deal when it is determined, when it is signed under the salary cap. This is how they fit Brandon Ayuk's deal under the salary cap. Okay? They kept his salary cap hit at $5.7 million early, $11.9 million in the second year, up to $16 million in the third year. It all fit nicely for the 49ers. Even with Brandon Ayuk hurt, it's not derailing their salary cap situation. So they need to be able to get Purdy onto a contract that surfs the salary cap wave in the same way. Whether it's $48 million, $52 million, $58 million, or $63 million is really irrelevant. People are going to be trying to pat themselves on the back over this, but that's not the number that you should be looking out for. So please just drop it with the APY. We don't know what the APY is going to be. We do know it's going to be a lucrative deal, and then we'll see what the full guarantees are. I'm way more interested about those to see where Brock Purdy ranks, because that actually is going to be substantive when it comes to the structure of the contract. All right, guys, everybody, thank you for watching. We're 55 minutes in. Mike, do I have to read something for the ads? I don't think I do this time, right? I think we're clear this week. Just making sure. I know I should have read it sooner if there was something, but I'm glad that I was able to come to you live today. It was a long trip across country, and we have some good talk. Kirk Cousins, Brock Purdy, and the 49ers. I know that Kirk Cousins, whenever there's news regarding him, especially news like today's, like the benching, it's the first thing 49ers fans think of. They're like, no, Kirk Cousins, please no, please no. That's a thing of the past, though. Cousins down to number 22 QBR, 36 years old, and it would be more expensive for the 49ers on the 2025 cap to roster Kirk Cousins than it would be to give Brock Purdy a mega deal. So that just should give you an idea and some perspective of how NFL team building works. Everybody, thanks for watching. I enjoyed it. I'll talk to you guys soon.